Now call the Estacada City Council together. You'll please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Okay, can I have roll call, please, Sadie?
Counselor Dunsmuir,
Present.
Counselor Hughes,
Here.
Counselor Lidkey,
Here.
Counselor McElroy,
Here.
Counselor Strobel,
Here.
Counselor Tenbush,
Here.
Mayor Drinkwine.
Here. Thank you very much, Sadie. We are at the first citizen and community group comment, and I have Estacada Chamber of Commerce, Brent Dodrell, going to speak on behalf.
Thank you very much. My name's Brent. I'm the outgoing president of the Chamber of Commerce. So this will be the last time I report to you for the Chamber of Commerce. Appreciate your service for the community, and I wish Councilor Dunsmuir all the best. Thank you for serving the last 4 years. So this is basically an annual report. We put together an annual report that I think was given to you in your box. And so it's there. I'm not going to go over all of that. You guys have a really full agenda. I just want to say thank you for your partnership as we work together with you. I think we're doing a great job for our chamber businesses and for business in general. It's been a good year for the Chamber of Commerce. Just as far as stats go, we have 142 members. That's up from last year. We're really excited that we have 30 new members. Some of those are businesses that have been in town and are just now becoming members of the Chamber of Commerce. But as you know, there's a number of new businesses, and we're excited to support them through ribbon cutting and promotion and advertising all the ways that we can. So we're just continuing to work hard for our chamber businesses, whether they're downtown or across town or industrial park, to help them be more prosperous by collaborating and networking and promoting them. Specifically on tourism, there's been a lot that's happened as far as getting the name of Estacada out in the tourism world. I don't know if you've done it yet, but if you go to visit Estacada's YouTube channel, there's a lot of amazing stuff on there about Estacada. I was just looking at that this afternoon, and there's a video on there from PGE about the history of Faraday Dam, which is actually phenomenal to watch. So that comes through the Chamber of Commerce tourism wing. Yeah, so some unique things have happened this year that I think are unprecedented as far as promoting Estacada. The Oregon Travel puts out their annual magazine, and I think we tried to notify you of this when it came out. Estacada, photos of Estacada and comments about Estacada are all through that magazine. We had a featured article in the magazine 1859, which is again a premier magazine promoting Oregon. We were featured on Coin News and KGW, AM Northwest, Rod on the Road, again with reporters out in Estacada drawing people's attention to all there is to do in Estacada. So we appreciate your partnership in helping us promote Estacada tourism in that way. So we developed a great partnership with Oregon Mount Hood Territories, Clackamas County Tourism, Travel Oregon. And right now, and I don't know that I'll be able to see it happen in my tenure, but I hope to stay on board at least to help. We're working hard to see the Forest Service back in town as we all anticipate the river opening up for tourism and camping. Having the Forest Service in town is really important. So we're working hard to make that happen. I want to give you an invitation this Wednesday at Estacada High School. We're doing a chamber luncheon. We'd love to have you all there. It's at 12 o'clock. I'll be giving a brief report. You don't have to listen to that because you just heard it, but Ryan Carpenter will be there. He'll be reporting on the school district and then also giving a tour for those that would like to stay. That's at 12 noon and lunch is provided. We'd love you to be our guest for that. That's all I got. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brent. We appreciate that.
You know where it's at the high school, Brent?
Yeah, I don't know the exact room, but you would enter in the doors by the, actually you can't enter in the doors by the tennis court, but it's in one of the rooms over by the tennis courts in that wing of the school. But you would need to enter in through the front doors and because of the security. Love to have you there. Thank you. Any questions? Appreciate it. Oh,
Do you know who the incoming president is? You said you're the outgoing one.
not yet.
Oh, okay. I guess.
We have a couple weeks to determine that, don't we? Yeah.
Good
Thank
luck.
you. Thanks,
Okay,
appreciate
thank
it.
Okay, we are at the consent agenda. You've all had a chance to read it over. Are there any questions? We already did it. That was for that one. We're gonna vote on it. Okay, any comments on the consent agenda? Does anybody have it? Jerry?
Is the proclamation for the football team, if we approve it in the consent agenda, we're still gonna read that out loud, right?
No, actually, that's gonna be given to them up at the high school. We have
Okay.
a plaque and everything with their thing on it. They're not here tonight to be represented.
Okay.
But we thought with everything going on, it would be kind of,
Charity could look it up and show.
yeah, she's gonna present it to them.
Present it.
Then I move to approve the consent agenda.
All right, I have a first. Do I have a second?
Second.
First and second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, consent passes. Thank you. All right, next we have department and committee reports. I will start off with any of your groups that you wish to speak on. Anybody? No? It's been kind of quiet with the holidays, so I imagine there's not much. So that puts it in your lap, Naomi.
Okay. Wow, I thought I had a couple more minutes. Can you hear me? Okay, it's okay. All right. I just want to report on a couple of things. First of all, just to update you, as we were just talking about streetscapes, there is a bollard up on Third and on Broadway that apparently a car hit. We don't know who did it. There was no police report. So anyway, it is damaged and there's a cone there now that's kind of highlighting that. And Don has, our public works director, has reordered that to replace that bollard, but it is about 8 months out. Yeah, so we're hoping it will get here sooner. And Don also has some preferences to express if we do decide to put bollards on Main Street, as far as what type, but he does have it ordered and I'm sorry that it's taking so long. It's one of the, I guess it's one of those supply chain things. So, yeah.
Is there something we can put there that will better than a cone that keeps getting knocked out, moved around things? I'd really hate someone to fall and break their ankle and that,
Mhm.
especially if it snows or something. And there's something better than just a cone.
Okay.
He's shaking his head, yes.
Yeah,
So,
nothing's coming to mind, but Don must have something coming to mind. So yeah, we'll highlight it better so that nobody trips on that.
thank you.
And then the other thing I wanted to just have a brief conversation with you all about. First of all, the planning commission they had a discussion at their meeting last Thursday night about childcare in Estacada. And I don't know if you've been following that discussion in the region, actually. There's a definite childcare shortage. And so they received input from local childcare providers and users. And they agreed, the planning commission agreed unanimously that they'd like the city to work on this issue over the coming year and to understand it, research, gather input, look at our existing policies and code to see where we can make changes to reduce barriers. So they're making that recommendation as a planning commission. And they recommend making it one of the 2023 goals. So maybe this is a topic that we could discuss at your goal setting session in January, just to make you aware that they talked about that issue and have a concern about it and would like to see the city work on that. So that being one thing. And then secondly, Councillor Lick, he brought to my attention his concern about losing all of our the trees when a new development goes in. You know, they typically, I think one tree got left, or one or two up on the top of Reagan Hill, but for the most part, the older trees that have been there are gone. And so he was interested in talking about, or having staff look into leaving some existing trees and what's the feasibility of that. And then also having a requirement that trees are planted at the new homes. There's a couple of trees planted. I don't know if you want to expand on that more.
Yeah, it's just over the last 6 months, I've had many people come to me about asking about clear cutting. I'm sure you guys have had people mention it more than once.
So my concept is if we can put something in our ordinances for when they're doing subdivision development, then maybe they're required to leave X percentage of old growth trees in there somehow or something. I'm not really sure how that would actually fit. And then all new houses coming in are required to have at least, 1 or 2 trees planted on the property, and then not little Japanese maple trees, but like an actual tree that might get up and grow up into something bigger one day. So we don't lose the Estacada feel of, we're an old logging town. I mean, trees are what we live on and we have and when we look around. So something that's going to help preserve that and then maybe bring some back where we've lost some of it at. And so just something along those lines. I didn't know exactly how or what. And so my request is that the council could direct staff to start looking into what those options might be, maybe what other cities have done or something. So.
Yeah, so I was going to bring it up for that reason, that if this would take some time to look into. So if it's something the full council is interested in, we could do that. But also in just talking with our planning department, Taylor brought up a good point that this project, like looking into this aspect of our code, is kind of like the childcare issue. And it would be best to approach those with a more holistic planning process that addresses all or multiple of our outdated goal elements in our comprehensive plan. And so rather than just doing one we'll look at this here, like in a vacuum, and then look at another issue over here in a vacuum to look at what the community would like as a whole. So I'm just kind of putting this out here tonight that you guys can think about it. We could talk about it at your goal setting next month, potentially see if I want to be meeting with you to find out what your priorities are for Estacada. And then that brings me to how would we do this as a more holistic approach? And I've been approached by Jane Reed and a person that she has worked with previously about a program called Community Heart and Soul that we have been looking into. And it's a community, it's a way to do a community visioning process, but it is led by a group of community members with support from the city. I don't have all the details. I don't know how much it costs. There's a lot more. We're swamped right now to even start supporting something like that. But I wanted to let you know I'm looking into that. I'd invited a 3 different counselors. Counselor Strobel's been able to attend a couple of these and listen on the process. And so we're really in just the information gathering phase, but if you might be just kind of start thinking about that, is that a priority? Is it not time yet for us to do this? And how could a community visioning then inform things like trees? Although I know the way that developments are going, trees are kind of an urgent issue if they're still going to be there. And so I don't know, I guess we're not really ready to take off on it yet, but I wanted to see if there's interest. We could put it as an agenda item in January, at one of your January meetings, discuss it a little bit more, and then can, carry it into goal setting if you want to. Would you want it to be on an agenda? Is it a concern that multiple people have, or what do you think?
Are you talking the trees part here first? or,
Yeah, let's
the
talk
community
trees first.
visioning?
Let's talk trees first. And then, the childcare discussion is a bit bigger of a dive. I mean, I don't know. We could put them. I'm probably messing this up.
My thought with the tree question is just that the state has some really strict rules around, I say this so much, I'm sorry, clear and objective standards, and cities must
Unreasonable
not,
cost and
cause
delay.
unreasonable cost and delay for residential development specifically. So that's my only thought with the tree thing, is if we're going to be adding rules to residential development, we want to be really careful that they're not breaking the laws. But I'm pretty sure that the city of Milwaukee recently did update their tree code or adopt new tree code. So we could, at least in the interim, maybe look at what other Oregon cities have gotten away with doing, So
I think that'd be good. I'll go Katie and then Jill.
So I have a love-hate relationship with tree ordinances. So Milwaukee just updated their existing tree code to be even more restrictive than what their previous one was. And they are known as the Tree City USA because they were one of the first cities to really adopt a sweeping tree code that just applied really strictly to everybody in Milwaukee. That being said, that's, a really environmentally driven initiative that I love to see. That being said, I've also been on the receiving end of it where like the Sandy tree code, which does exist. So definitely reach out to Sandy to find out what their tree code is, because one does exist. And I'll tell you, it actually presents a couple of barriers. As someone who is developing property, has now built an apartment complex, and Sandy would not let me take out that tree, but that tree is such a problem and it's so trashy and I just want to get rid of it, but they won't let me. So I have a love-hate relationship with it. My main question to the city staff is, do you even have the staff capacity to enforce and send someone out to measure how wide this tree is and be able to have the knowledge of, oh, this is a super endangered subspecies of sequoia that we cannot let you get rid of? I just don't see Estacada having the staff capacity to really do that at a grander scale, especially at the rate that the development is happening in the city. It would totally make sense for a city the size of Sandy or Milwaukee that has a bigger city hall and therefore bigger city staff. But are you guys even able to accommodate enforcing something like that if one were to pass in the city? That's a big question.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
The answer to Counselor Dunsmuir's answer is simple. You make it as part of the cost for them to pay for an arborist or some specialist to come out there and make sure they solve that. But that's a discussion further down the road. And we also have a compliance officer that's their job is to go out and make sure things are in compliance. But besides that, I think the tree thing is definitely good. And I was about to say Sandy does have one. I think the one she's referring to is more on an ongoing basis. We can have one that has to focus around development. But my main question I want to talk about is also the CARES group. I want to know how to get on that. And you said you had some counselors on there. I'm kind of curious why some of us haven't heard that the CARES Community Heart and Soul.
Community
Sorry.
Heart and Soul.
Yeah, I want to know how to get on that. My second question is, why is some counselors notified about it and not the rest?
Well, yeah, Community Heart and Soul is just a topic that it's a program that has come up that I was checking into. And I invited some community members. I did, maybe I should have put it out to everybody and say, hey, who wants to participate on this? And I'm sorry that I didn't do that. If that's something we met twice, looked at their program. And it is a community visioning program that is kind of a grassroots, community driven initiative where you come out with, it helps identify values in the community. And so that you can carry that forward into comprehensive planning or things like that. But it's kind of a vague concept right now to me, as far as how it would come together. Could we even have a group of community members that wants to participate in that? So I'm just kind of tossing that out across your bow in case you want to discuss that later on for visioning. You can also hire a consultant to help us go through that too, if it's something that you're interested in.
Feel
So
free
I
to
think
throw my name on the list for the next meeting.
for the next community, okay. Sure. And then, so for the trees, should we put that on the agenda? We can bring back just like a white sheet of paper of what maybe some other cities have done, see if it's something we want to go forward with. For the childcare, I think I'm just sending, the planning commission wants to prioritize that. They're going to do a meeting with you in February. We're trying to schedule a joint meeting with you. And so that would be something that just to be aware of for the future. Okay.
I want to comment before we go any further. I don't think the city ought to be playing the role in the childcare area. We are a very busy city, and it's obviously growing outside the perimeter here, but we are not in the childcare business. That is not what the city is supposed to do. I mean, working with other people to figure out how we might be of service in that area is good, but I don't think we should take that on with everything else we have on that issue. And then on the other one, we speak about global warming daily. Okay, I hear this all over the internet, all over the TVs about global warming. But when it comes to putting a tree in, we're saying, hey, wait a minute, can we do that? Is that possible? It seems to me that as we build more houses and more concrete, more streets, the global warming issue is at an all-time high, right? So it only seems natural that we would focus our attention on that tree planting theory and find a way to make it work for everyone and it's fair to the developers. So that would be my preference that we go that route. That's it. Go ahead, Jill.
As far as what Mayor Drinkwine had said there for the childcare thing, as I agree on. I was gonna say that's something that seems like more the city might try to take the nonprofits in the city and the churches and the groups like that and try to push that to them and try to organize them to come together and let them focus on that, because that seems like that's an issue that they could solve before a city should be getting involved.
I know there's a couple other comments that I see over there with hands raised. I want to say we were kind of looking more into the zoning side of that, zoning and planning for
Okay.
childcare, but
Katie, go ahead.
I was gonna say almost essentially what the mayor and Counselor Litke just said, which is that I don't think that the city really diving deep into how we solve the childcare issue is something that the city needs to be spending a lot of time on. I watched Sandy spend actually a long time having conversations around that particular issue. And essentially they found that the state or the problem is at the systemic level, at the state level, where it's just not something that an individual city can really solve. That being said, if the planning commission has looked at like our comprehensive zoning map and said, you know what, childcare should be an absolute outright permitted use in this particular zone, and then maybe identify a couple of other zones that it should be a conditional use in, that's a really easy conversation for the planning commission to have and then to present to the city council. And I think that would probably solve essentially the issue that you guys are talking about right now. But having the city staff, having the city council really spend a lot of time diving deep into an issue that a lot of people have already been diving deep into and have figured out that there's not a lot you can do without
It's a
really
hard
changing a lot of
topic.
things at the state level. I mean, really, if it's a matter of, hey, in this zone, we should make childcare centers an outright use, and then in this zone, we should make it a conditional use, that's an easy conversation.
Terry.
So I just wanted to clarify, I don't think that staff is asking us to jump into childcare in itself. I think the staff is asking us if we want to look into reducing the barriers for childcare businesses to come to Estacada. I think that's the goal. I think that's what staff was asking us, not to get into the actual childcare itself, but just reducing the barriers to bring, for a daycare business to run in Estacada. Just trying to help get that rolling.
Well,
And that's pretty much what I was gonna say as well too. So we're good, I think.
okay. So we'll bring back a tree discussion at some point, and we will not get too involved in childcare, but potentially that was the phrasing of that. Look at existing policies code to see where we can make changes to reduce barriers to childcare is how I should have stated that. And then just keep in mind that I don't know if it's time yet to do visioning in Estacada to find out what the community collective type vision and priorities and values of the community are. But I have had one group reach out to me. It's kind of like Ford Family Foundation, where they on rural development initiatives. And I can send you a link on that. But there's also other ways to do that when it becomes time. And like right now, we're in the thick of the transportation plan. So we probably wouldn't pick up something that's going to be staff intensive at this point. But I just wanted to share that with you, that it's coming around and it might be, and the planning commission had expressed interest in community visioning too. So that was a little more than just a report. So I'm sorry, I didn't think I was going to delve so deep in that, but just wanted to share those things with you when we're together as a group so I could get some feedback. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any more
Think
questions
that
on any of that? Okay, moving right along, we are now going to go into a public hearing on subdivision 2022-01 S, tax lots 34E, 17D, 300 and 201, and tax lots 34E, 17, 700 and 400 continued from November. So I will let you speak on that.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council. So this is the Coyote Ridge subdivision. We gave the full presentation at the last meeting on November 14th. So I'm not going to repeat everything, but I did want to give a little refresher and then explain the changes that there are since the last time. So this is the view of the subject property. It involves a total of 4 tax lots that are all outlined there in yellow. It's in the northern part of the city. You've got Southeast Eagle Creek Road to the west of the subject property. This is the list of kind of the main components of the project. So it's going to be a total of 224 parcels. 222 of them will be residential. They're intended for single-family homes. I shouldn't have written low-density residential here because about half of the site is in the North City residential zone. But single-family home lots, none of them will be smaller than 5,000 square feet, which is the minimum allowed in the NCR zone. And then 2 of the lots are intended for multifamily development along Eagle Creek Road. And that's the area where within 200 feet of Eagle Creek Road, you're not allowed to develop new single-family homes. So this approval is just going to plat the lots. They could, if they decided they didn't want to do apartments, they could put cottage clusters or, quadplexes or something like that. But they're sharing that they're intending to do apartments there. We talked about the street intersection improvements. They'll have those 3 private streets that will double as public utility easements, 2 stormwater facility tracts, 1 tract that is protecting the significant wetland on site. They've got an open space tract, several landscaped common areas. All of those tracts are to be owned and maintained by the HOA. Unless the city wants to take over tract, I think it's tract L, which is going to have contain the significant wetland and also the open space area running along Curran Creek. And but for now, it's going to be owned and maintained by the HOA. And then, we've got that 70-foot buffer around the creek to prohibit development within that 70 feet. This is their preliminary layout. So you can see how all the streets are going to connect to Eagle Ridge at Curran Creek, which is phases 1 and 2 of that are to the south of this property. You've got the multifamily lots over here on Eagle Creek Road. Sorry, down here. So I wanted to give just a brief recap of what we covered and talked about at the last meeting. We went over the details of the proposal. We heard the Planning Commission's recommended conditions of approval, talked about how the criteria were found to be met, originally recommending that proportional contribution toward the needed intersection improvements. There's the intersection of Highway 224 and Hypel outside of the city's UGB, and then the intersection of Eagle Creek Road and River Mill inside the city's UGB, but under Clackamas County jurisdiction. So both of those were complicated for different reasons, but we were proposing that the applicant would contribute a proportional cost toward those projects since, right. Then we discussed the council's concerns that would not satisfy the approval criteria in 16.74, which is our concurrency chapter of our code. That chapter, on the next slide, we're going to go over the details of what that chapter requires. And so in response to that, those concerns, we learned that the applicant is willing to just build the traffic signal as a requirement for platting, which will definitely satisfy that criteria. And the city will work with them to get a reimbursement mechanism in place, whether it's an LID, or I'll talk about in a second how we've started the process of adopting the project into the city's SDC. So that's the preferred mechanism. So I put this up here just in case anyone wants to read the language of the concurrency chapter. This isn't the whole chapter, but these are the applicable pieces. And this was also called out in the staff report starting on page 13. And then the updated findings related to this are bolded in the staff report, just so for your easy reference. And so at the last meeting, we had a unanimous kind of head nod from the council, agreeing that the applicant building that signal before platting does seem to be the preferred option and would satisfy these criteria. So with all of that, what has changed since the last meeting is we removed those two conditions of approval requiring the proportional contribution. The first one was for the Eagle Creek Road and River Mill intersection, which needs a signal or a roundabout. It's going to be a signal. And so in order to make sure that that signal will indeed get built, we needed to find out whether Clackamas County would allow it to get built since it's under their jurisdiction. And we did get confirmation from them just a few days ago on the 8th. And then for the Hypel and Highway 224 intersection, we kind of looked into that further, and we really do not have a way to, that intersection is both outside of our urban, our city limits and outside of the urban growth boundary. So we don't have jurisdictional authority inside city limits, and we don't have planning authority, which is inside the urban growth boundary. So we really don't have a mechanism for collecting or dispersing any of those contributions if we did collect money for that project. We don't have the authority to, we don't have any control over the project. And I would argue we don't have an obligation to that project. So we took that one out. And then for the River Mill Eagle Creek intersection, the applicant's required per the current condition, required to build the signal regardless of any guarantee of reimbursement. But we agree that it makes sense for this to be a city project funded by SDCs because the majority of the trips that are going through, this particular subdivision is not creating the majority of the trips at that intersection. So we have started the process of adding that project into the SDC so that by the time they start construction, they'll get SDC credits for that. And then the last change is that the applicant is now proposing to develop the project in 2 phases, which I'll show here. So the first phase is going to be just the phase line is Curran Creek. So the first phase is going to be to the west of the creek. The second phase is going to be to the east of the creek. I reviewed this with the city engineer. Neither of us found any issues with the phasing plan, but ultimately it's up to the council. If there's any concerns about that, we can talk about them. And I think that's all. Yeah, so questions from the council.
Okay, any questions? Jerry?
Well, I don't know if this question can be answered, but can you go back one slide to the map again? So I still have concerns about the bottom right corner, that cul-de-sac there. I don't know if there's a reason with as far as like the way the land is, why they had to put the cul-de-sac in there, why they couldn't have just continued that street down and then kind of, I just that part of it right there. I mean, and it's just a personal, thing. I don't understand why there's a cul-de-sac.
Why not punch it through to
The
and
street.
connect to street?
Yeah. And then flatten out that lower street or, where it hooks. I just something about that. I don't even know why, but it bugs me.
Yeah. Okay, maybe. Yeah, I don't have a response. We kind of, they
Yeah, I
submit
don't
plans
know
and if
it's-
they meet the code,
if
we
it's
say,
the
okay.
grade, if it's the grade there or what, but I don't know. It just seems like a poor design, but.
Joe?
Which phase would be first? You didn't mention that.
The yellow. would
The
be
yellow
phase
phase would
one.
be first and then the green. Okay.
Oh,
Do we know when they would anticipate starting the improvements at Eagle Creek and River Mill? Should this go forward?
That's a hard question to answer. It's hard to say how quickly any given developer is going to move on their project. They have a deadline of 4 years from the date of the land use approval to come in with a plat that meets all the requirements. And even with platting, they are allowed to bond for any public improvements that aren't completed at the time of platting. So they could come in and bond for the whole signal, and that would satisfy, I guess the city has the right to deny a bond. We wouldn't have to accept
We'd
a
have to
bond.
Discuss that with the engineer.
Yeah,
Our city
but-
engineer.
But bottom
yeah,
line, they've
it's
got
hard to say.
time.
Yeah, they've got time. They've got time.
A couple questions based on this. First of all, just to understand, the developer will pay for the signal. There'll be a special district or something put together where SDCs will pay that back over X amount of years, or however long it takes to get there, right? Minus his responsible portion of it.
The SDCs would come to him in the form of a credit
Credit against his SDCs.
at the time of the building permit being issued. Okay.
So eventually, the point is, it comes back to him over some way or the other over the course of X amount of years, or depending on how long it takes to get build up there or something. And okay, second question is, you just said that he could do within 4 years or something, he could build it. Is it possible to get a commitment from him in writing that would be started or done by X time so that we can know that it's not going to be 4 years when he starts building this traffic light for something that he's going to have houses on sooner?
That sounds really complicated. I
It might
don't
be
know.
complicated, but I think the people of Estacada are going to want to know if we're going to be approving this to go forward, that traffic light's going to come sooner than those houses would be built and sold. So.
Isn't that a requirement in there that that the improvements to the street need to happen before?
They have to be built or bonded for. So you could remove the provision allowing the bonding for the signal. If you wanted to make sure that it was built instead of bonded for, then they wouldn't be allowed to plat the lots until the signal was installed, and that would satisfy that concern. They wouldn't be able to build any new homes because they haven't platted any lots.
And I know we're talking signal, but I thought I read in here, stop sign first and then signal.
Yeah, stop signs will be installed anyway with the construction of the Eagle Ridge subdivision. So those will be put in first, unless it's the same developer. So if they decide to just put in the signal, since they're doing all of all of the intersection improvements, then that would satisfy that. But it would at least be interim stop signs and then signal at the time of Coyote Ridge.
Did you have some?
No, Counselor Strobel kind of asked it because it was my understanding that the light was going to be installed prior to the development starting, but that was already.
Okay, let's satisfy all the budget. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I guess that'll be a question for maybe after we hear from the applicant. Does the council want to clarify in the conditions of approval that the signal needs to be built and not just bonded for?
Great. All right, is there any correspondence regarding this application of you?
No additional correspondence beyond the county comments we received and the email from the applicant requesting the phasing.
Okay, I will now read a statement. A statement about evidence presented at the hearing as an issue which may be the basis for an appeal to LUBA and must be raised prior to the close of the record at the final eventuary hearing on the specific application. Such issue shall be raised with sufficient specificity so as to afford LUBA and the parties an adequate opportunity to respond to each issue. Failure of an issue to be raised at the hearing or in person or by letter, or a failure to provide sufficient specificity to afford LUBA and the parties an adequate opportunity to respond to the issue precludes an appeal to LUBA on that issue. Okay, is the applicant here?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
And
Okay. So does council have any questions to refer to the applicant or his staff? I think those are all his people up there. Is that right?
Mhm.
I'm not seeing any.
I guess I'd like to know, I'd like to hear from the applicant what the intentions are regarding the intersection. If that is to be if we can anticipate that getting constructed prior to what do we, the
Letting.
planning.
No. Would that be referred to up there?
The applicant's here. Can we just have them come up and talk? You good with come up and talking?
All right, step up to the mic.
So Buck, you're unmuted, but we are not hearing you if you're speaking.
I'm not speaking.
Okay.
No, okay. We'll let you speak to that, and if you need Buck, you can.
You got it.
I'm ready.
My name is Brett Grantham. I'm the applicant for the application. My address is 33040 Southeast Darrow Road, Estacada. To answer your question, absolutely. As we discussed at the last meeting, we're doing everything we can to ease the traffic upon that area, especially if we can bring it in sooner rather than later. Totally open to that. The only thing we discussed last time on the Eagle Ridge piece that's been approved, it does have the requirement for a widening, which would give an additional lane and stop signs, basically a four-way stop at that location. So what I would propose is, if we're looking, we could actually speed it up quite a bit more if we can just bypass the stop sign requirement for the Eagle Ridge and replace it with the street light. We could have the street light put in upon the recording of the Eagle Ridge piece, which is the very first pieces. Those are the ones that were approved, a year ago, and hopefully we'll be breaking ground in the next, 3 months. So in that situation, it would just allow us the savings. I mean, it's minimal savings, obviously, for those extra stop signs, but every little bit helps, especially since, the outlay is going to be quite a bit. So, the county engineer, Kurt, was gracious enough to get everything set up, got the ball rolling with the SDC creditability for it that will come, as the permits are pulled for the houses. So there should be, zero cost to the city in that respect. It would just be as a credit, on our permit fees as we bring them in, as Councilor Licky mentioned. So I would propose that if the council would be open to it, and then that would guarantee that that light gets put in, basically in a there's a little bit of variance there just with the market where, where it's at, and there may be a little bit of a delay to it, but that would put it in more of the 1 year to, 15 months, maybe 18-month timeframe, but well in advance of anything we're talking about tonight, being underway for development or homes able to be built.
Okay. Does it satisfy your questions?
That was my question. How
Okay.
long did he anticipate it take? Yeah.
All right.
To me, that seems good. I guess I'd refer to planning just for their input on that.
I think that's a great idea. I think that makes things easier for everyone. I think it's a win-win. For this particular approval, so that sort of changes the conditions. Whenever you come in with the plat for the Eagle Ridge, we look through the conditions of that approval and make sure they're all met. And so that condition with the stop signs, we would say, oh, well, there's a traffic signal there, then that's beyond met, right? But for these conditions of approval, if for some reason that doesn't happen, I guess I'm curious, Brett, and do you still want to change these conditions of approval to not allow the bonding for the signal, just in case it doesn't happen with Eagle Ridge, not allow the bonding to make sure the signal is built by the time these homes come online? So we can get to that at decision time, but otherwise, yes, I think it's a great idea to just allow the signal to be built with the Eagle Ridge platting process.
All right, and I think everybody's in agreement on that outside of the bonding.
Okay.
To do that. We appreciate that. Thank
Yeah,
you.
And we're open to that as well. If it, we would rather see the signal in place, earlier rather than a bond with a guarantee to do it later. So.
Well, being a plus that you live here in Estacada, So you have a pretty good perception of what goes on here and driving ability and all that. So I think you have a better understanding of what we need and how fast we need it.
Well, I've sat at that intersection myself quite a few times, so
All right.
I do understand it. And this would allow us to be able to put this in place prior to a lot of the other developments to the east and to the north that aren't affiliated with us in any way. But as those homes start coming out of the ground, it would give us the ability to, control that traffic earlier on as well. So.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Any more questions for Brett? Mike?
How will the SDCs be distributed for the reimbursement? Is it to all of the developments that are creating the traffic, all of the new permit? Where is he recovering the SDC credits from?
That would be any building permit in any part of the city as they pay an SDC, right? Is that how that?
Well, typically, the developer would, when they apply for the building permits, get that credit on their building permit. So he just wouldn't pay that portion of his STC until it's paid off.
So he'd be getting the credits and then everybody else pulling building permits and paying the
Is paying.
SDCs
Mhm.
would be paying for that portion of the stuff like that.
So basically, it's like he's putting a deposit down and just pulling it out of the account as he goes, in so many words.
So if no homes are built, no building permits are pulled, you don't realize that credit. It's just an expense
Yeah.
to him.
Thank you.
That satisfy the question?
Yeah.
Okay. Jerry?
So back to the mixed or the multifamily mixed use to are you? Is the intent to put multifamily units in there regardless, or is that just a concept idea up front?
Well, we are looking to do it as multifamily, but we have actually with Counselor Dunsmuir's, and I apologize, I hope I didn't mispronounce, but her request on the last meeting, or at least where she had mentioned, more diverse housing types. We'd actually been looking at potentially doing some cottage clusters there as well to get our purchase price down low enough for the very entry level component for, Estacada buyers. We're working on that. We actually have set up with a nonprofit in Portland that is through a mortgage company that gifts down payment funds as well as closing costs. So we're trying to work out within their parameters. And if we can get that off the ground, it would give people the ability to come in with no money down and be able to purchase. And I think we can get those into the, high 200s. And you're talking, 1 and 2 bedroom units, 8 to 1,200 square foot range. So a product type that nobody's building. We have some great sites for that, the smaller than 5,000 square foot sites that are a little narrower, a little deeper, gives us the ability to do some of this product as well that could spill over, not just in the cottage clusters we're talking, but an actual single family, first time home that would be, now granted, there's not a lot of people that need a 1 bedroom house or a 2 bedroom house, at the traditional mentality is everybody wants a 3 bedroom or more, but there's just no variety. There's no other builders doing it because frankly, at that price point, there's not really a lot of profit to be made, right? So not that we try to be different. We try not to be a profit centric business, but we just have to make sure we cover our expenses too, outlaying for streetlights, things like that adds up quick. So it does give us a little bit of variety there. And so that's what our real hope is, because what we'd like to see, I've got 2 sons, both graduated here in the local high school. Both live locally, both are looking for their first opportunity. And right now, there's just no housing opportunities at that level. But we also want to build some apartments too. We'll definitely do one of the parcels as apartments because we're desperately in need of rental housing here as well. And I'm sure you're all aware. So this would give you the ability from rental housing to basically small cottage clusters as a first time ownership situation, a first time move up situation from there to a second time move up situation to the lots on the other side of the creek that are in the R1 zone, the much bigger lots. Those allow for, more of our traditional product like we were able to build up on top of, Regan Hill up there off of 4th and Darrow Road. So that's how we see this neighborhood developing. And being the centerpiece, it's kind of like tic-tac-toe. And the whole top line, the whole, left side are completely filled in by the other builders. So we can't do anything with theirs, but we are the connector for all of it. So if all those streets run through and we are able to accommodate all of these housing levels, I think we can really have a home run, because it seems like a lot of homes now, but obviously when it was annexed in, that was the intent, changing where it was industrial land before. And then the state did the comprehensive zone change and turned it into, residential that could be better utilized. It gives us a real opportunity, and it's an opportunity we're not going to see again. It could be 5, 10, could be 15 years before we see another urban growth boundary expansion that would open up any buildable land that would allow us to replicate what we have the opportunity to do today. So.
I like your concept. Are you comfortable with that question? Was it answered?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Joel?
Kind of a left field question here, but you had our conversation earlier about the trees stuff. I was kind of curious what your plan is for that. And if you have anything along those lines, even though it's not a requirement.
Yes, I actually am very pro on keeping as many trees as possible. So when the last development we did here in town on top of the hill, we tried to preserve as many trees as we could. We were able to save something along the line of about 12, larger growth trees throughout the neighborhood. And that's just in a neighborhood of 30 homes. So small neighborhood. But we were able to preserve 7 acres of open space behind it that is fully treed and protected, and it is under an HOA. So, it's managed at no cost to the city. If one of those trees comes down, the HOA takes care of it. They'll send in the arborist to cut it up and remove it, so it's not dangerous to any of the properties. The new development, there was some clearing done on the 4th phase, which is one of the largest areas, but is something that needed to happen because of course, the new River Mill Road that is the main connector going through the development. It had to be cleared around that, obviously. So, but even in that scenario, we kept as many trees as we could throughout all of the buffer zones, anywhere that we could save it. So if you were to tally up the amount of trees, that's a 20-acre parcel, and we were able to save, I believe, 2.5 acres of trees on it. And it's our intent to keep as many of those as we can. A few of them may be too close to a building envelope, and those might have to be removed, but our intent is to keep it minimal. What we find is, obviously, people like looking at trees, especially in new developments. It's a double-edged sword. I mean, we can't build large acre lots and avoid, urban sprawl. So when you have to build the density as we do in an urban growth boundary, it's kind of the best of both worlds, right? It allows you to go out in the morning with your coffee and still have a tree in your yard, or hopefully a few of them.
Yeah.
And to speak to the other part of that same question was the street trees, the plantings of the street trees out front. Yeah. And we actually did quite a bit of that. If you were to go, drive through the neighborhood, on every landscape that we do in our front yards, we do, heavy shrubs, or in the case of the vast majority of those, 1 to 2 street trees along the streets. And they're already starting to bloom up, in the last spring they came out, really starts looking nice.
Any more questions? Well, we're going to let you off the hook. You answered everything really well. You do a good job with this. I appreciate the fact that you're looking at all of it, and not just a piece of it. Some developers come in, they take their piece and they're gone. You've actually taken the time to give us everything that we asked for, and then some.
Thank you. We don't get an opportunity to do too many of these, developments that have the ability to really move the needle with local housing. And this is one opportunity that we have to be able to do that. So.
Good. Thank
look
you.
forward
Do
to it.
any of your staff wish to speak before we move on?
If you can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay. All right. Well, this is Anne Marie Skinner. And I just want to say, I want to second what the mayor said. I've been doing planning for over 25 years, and I've never worked with a developer like Brett, who is so open and amenable to going above and beyond what is required. So count yourselves lucky there in Estacada that you have him. He's really a treasure. And I would just point out about bonding, that bonding is bonds are difficult to get, and in some ways they're more expensive to have than just going through with construction to begin with. So second, what Brett said about fully intending to build that, build the traffic signals without having to do the bond. And one other thing that I was thinking of as Brett was speaking about the cottage clusters and the two lots that we put in the narrative for apartments, is that the other uses that are allowed along with apartments are triplexes and fourplexes along with cottage clusters. So when looking at those two lots, we'll probably look at all of those uses together. Triplexes, fourplexes, apartments, cottage clusters, and as Brett said, come up with a nice mix that fits in with the single family and the needs of the community. We'll look at all the allowed uses together to come up with the best plan. I just wanted to add that. And that's it.
Thank you, Ann. We appreciate that. Any other comments from staff? No? Everybody good? Okay, we will now, I have no speaker request forms in front of me, so we'll now close the public hearing and reopen the city council. And kind of give us an idea how you want this to read.
Yeah, sure. If you did want to include a change to the conditions of approval to make sure that the signal is built before the lots are allowed to be platted, can't be bonded for, then I'll pull this up on the screen here. So you don't have to memorize what I'm spouting off. Okay. So if you wanted to add that change to the conditions of approval, you could pick at the bottom here, move to approve, but change condition number 59 to require the traffic signal to be built before platting. That would satisfy that. Yep.
Okay.
So moved.
As built for bond.
Right. Yep. Yep. And so I will also pull up, can I push escape here? So while we were talking, I just made the change in yellow here. Don't know if you can read that. So this used to just not have any of the yellow. It used to start the sentence at the, right? So the city may accept in lieu of said completion of improvements, blah, blah, blah. So I just added, with the exception of that traffic signal at that intersection, the city may accept.
Okay. So that is the motion on the floor. I've heard a first.
Second.
I have a first and second. All those in favor
Wait,
say
I'm
aye.
just we got that. Just, I wanted to clarify. So a yes vote. I was trying to make this more clear. Sorry to interrupt you. But a yes vote would approve this subdivision. But with that, as Taylor just explained, and a no vote would deny it that way if you wanted to do a different type of a motion.
That's my motion, yes.
And we have a first and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Okey-doke, thank you.
I will now close the city council meeting and reopen the public hearing for the annexation 2022-06 and annex of 34E, 20 AB tax lots 800, 900, and 1,000. Go ahead and take it away.
All right, good evening, council. So now we will present Planning Commission's report on file 2022-06 annex, also known under the project name Greenlight Home First LLC. So tonight, council will issue a decision on this annexation proposal. That decision is final unless appealed to the Land Use Board of Appeals, or LUBA. If this proposal is approved, City Council will then put the annexation into effect by adopting a resolution to annex the property into city limits, but only after all conditions of approval have been met. I'll outline those conditions in detail later on in the presentation. All right, so the applicant and property information. The applicant is Greenlight Home First LLC, as I said, located in Portland at that address. And the property, it comprises three tax lots and then an adjacent strip of Southeast Eagle Creek Road that I believe measures 73 by 172 feet or something to that effect. And this is the comp plan map of the city, and it shows that the subject area is entirely within the UGB, and this satisfies the first code requirement for annexation. And this is a close-up vicinity map with the incorporated areas shaded gray, unincorporated areas shaded gray, and it shows that the property is adjacent to existing city limits on its eastern boundary. So basically that strip just to the east of the Eagle Creek Road strip. And this satisfies the second requirement for annexation. Okay, so section 16.124.030 lists the approval criteria that need to be met in order for the council to approve an annexation. And criteria A says the proposed use for the site complies with the Estacada comprehensive plan and with the designation on the Estacada comprehensive plan map. And criterion B, adequate capacity of urban services exists or can be made available within 3 years of the annexation approval. And C, findings documenting the availability of police, fire, parks, and school facilities and services shall be made to allow for conclusionary findings, either for or against the proposed annexation. The adequacy of these services shall be considered in relation to annexation proposals. Okay, so now I'll go over each one of those in turn. Okay, criterion A. This first criterion regards the compliance with the comprehensive plan. And since the applicant is proposing to zone that property according to its adopted designation, which is central mixed use, that criterion is met. And the second criterion pertains to the availability of city services, which includes water, sewer, and transportation system. The application submitted a capacity statement from city engineer Kurt, dated June 13th of this year, which documented that the city can indeed serve this property, provided that it develops according to the uses and densities allowed in the proposed central mixed use zone. And the last criterion requires findings regarding the availability of police, fire protection services, parks, and school facilities. So the city's contracts with Clackamas County Sheriff's Office for police services, and the property is within Estacada School District and Estacada Rural Fire District 69. And both of these districts receives notice of this annexation proposal and neither submitted concerns. As for park and open space, Wade Creek Park and the planned Campanella Park are both about a quarter mile away. And Timber Park is about 1.5 miles drive from this property. And so these are satisfied. These findings satisfy this criterion. So the Planning Commission's recommendation includes the following conditions: that the annexation include the 3.11 acre territory as officially described in the county's tax map, that the applicant sign a waiver of remonstrance against the dedication of right-of-way and other transportation improvements that the city may require, excuse me, in the future, as well as provide revisions to the illustration and legal description of the property to the Department of Revenue in order to complete the taxing district boundary change. Oops. Okay. that the property be zoned as designated in the Estacada Comprehensive Plan map upon council's adoption of the annexation. And finally, that the city's comp plan map and zoning map be amended to reflect the annexation and zone changes. And that concludes staff's presentation of the planning commission report.
Okay, thank you, Joe. You had a question?
You're welcome. If you have any questions?
Yeah, how much of the road are we annexing in? And is there compensation from the county for taking part of that road?
That's a complicated one. Yes. Yeah. You asked how much of the
Yeah,
road?
yeah, how far of a distance? I'm just kidding.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll pull that map.
Or
Maybe we can zoom in a little bit more. Yeah, there we go.
what about 2 blocks roughly?
Yeah, what was it? It's
1,000
70,
feet.
73 by 712 feet, I think. Yeah, so about 700 feet worth, which is an eighth of a mile, something like that.
Is there compensation from the county for
Yeah,
adopting
you
that
wanna-
in?
So the annexation, because the road is it's classified by the city as a major collector and by the county as a minor arterial. And because it's higher classification than a local street, then upon annexation, it doesn't automatically transfer jurisdictional authority. So bringing it into city limits won't transfer it from being the county's road to being the city's road. But we are in conversation with the county about getting an IGA together, which actually this is because of the traffic signal that we're talking about, getting an IGA together to, in the interim, transfer at least permitting and maintenance authority over to the city. And then once the roadway comes into city limits, then that would initiate the IGA would provide for, upon annexation, the jurisdictional transfer would begin. And they pay us, they have a standard bid price, which right now is something like $100 a ton for a 2-inch overlay for any of the areas, which is a good price. So that would not be guaranteed to come to us until the time that the areas come into city limits. So since it's coming into city limits now, we don't have the IGA together. We're not sure whether this piece would be included in that price, but if we were to do this IGA for all the way up to Deuce Road, then any future annexations, that cost would get calculated for all of the unincorporated areas.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, moving forward, is the applicant here? All right.
Good evening, city councilors. My name is Steve Kay with Cascadia Planning and Development Services. I'm representing the applicant. The applicant's also here to say a few words this evening. For the record, my address is P.O. Box 1920 Silverton, Oregon 97381. So the applicant, Greenlight Home First LLC, they're proposing to annex their 1.97 acre site. The area that's in the right of way is approximately 1.14 acres, if you're interested. So with this annexation, the property would be zoned central mixed use, and that zone allows a variety of commercial uses and residential uses. The applicant's intention is to develop multifamily housing for meet that additional rental need in the community. The staff report does a great job of addressing how this proposal meets all the criteria for approval. As far as applicable goals and policies, the comprehensive plan, the information that's submitted regarding wastewater and water service capacity in the city. This property being annexed and developed in the future would also provide improvements, frontage improvements on Eagle Creek Road. And of course, that would enhance the transportation improvements that are happening in this area of the city. We've also included letters from the school district saying that there's capacity to serve these additional students in this annexation area. So the applicants reviewed the staff report. There's no concerns with any of the recommended conditions of approval. So we thank you for your consideration this evening, and I'll be available to answer questions. And I believe the applicant would like to say a few words as well.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Tim Lawler with Greenlight and Home First. Thank you to Alan and Steve for presenting the project and checking off all the criteria for us. I just want to give you a little bit of introduction. I actually have talked to the City Council before, so kind of maybe a reintroduction to some of the citizens here. But yeah, so Greenlight Development and Home First, we build multifamily housing all over the state. Currently, we're building projects in Malala, Tillamook, State and Mill City, Corvallis. We're trying to really work and partner with smaller communities outside the metro regions. So we're very excited about this opportunity. We already have a phase 1 going on down the street of multifamily on Eagle Creek Road. And a large part of our developments, one of the most important parts is partnership with the city. The planning department, the city manager have been amazing. I've got to know them fairly well. Haven't met most of you too much, but we've also been introduced through the city to great groups like Todos Juntos and Ant Farm, which we're definitely 100% working with Todos Juntos. And we're trying to make something happen with Ant Farm, 2 great nonprofits and community groups here. As well as on our goal with our future multifamily, one of our goals, again, this is far out. This is just the annexation. This isn't necessarily relevant to criteria, but just want to let you know, is to create wildfire response to the wildfire affected homes and communities. So our goal is to make a priority for anyone who's been affected by a wildfire. They would actually get a priority on our wait list for the housing. So it's a response. So yeah, that's a little intro on Greenlight and Home First. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And we're here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Paul?
If this gets approved tonight, what kind of maybe a high level anticipated timeline would you be looking at?
The annexation approval is such an early phase. I mean, we would be looking, best case scenario, applying for permits in a year, maybe, hopefully less. We want to be fast and obviously build homes that's needed. So maybe less, but that's probably realistic. Thanks.
Any other? No? We thank you. You were very descriptive and everything got answered. So everybody's happy. I'm happy with that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you tonight for your presentation.
Thank you.
All right. Does staff have anything else you want to add to this? I have no speaker request forms on this. So.
I think we're good.
Okay. All right. So we will now leave the public hearing, reopen the city council.
I move to approve with the conditions presented.
Okay. I have a first on the floor. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay. Moving along on this, we're done with that. We have the third consideration for ordinance 2022 -010 and ordinance amending chapters 8, housing of the needs analysis for the city. So go ahead, Tim.
I don't have any presentation for this, keeping it pretty simple. So unless there's discussion, I mean, I can pull anything up on the screen that I have access to on my computer. But the ordinance was amended per our last meeting to disallow anything above a 2-unit in the R1 zone. So you can do a single family home, a duplex, or a 2-unit 2-unit common wall. And then you could have 1 accessory dwelling unit. And then in the R2 zone was changed to disallow anything above 3 units. So single family, duplex, triplex, 3-unit middle family housing types. And because in the R2 zone, we currently allow triplexes and quadplexes as conditional uses, that change meant we had to re-add quadplexes as a conditional use in the R2 zone. And then in the, what was the other change? There was a third one. Oh, the downtown Main Street ground floor residential, took that out of the downtown zone.
Okay, great. Katie, you had a question?
Question, not really. Discussion point, absolutely. I'm trying really hard not to be so passionate about this because I understand that's where some people lose me. I want you to wrap your head around something though. Currently, today, as our development code already stands, in R1 zones, we already allow single family homes with ADUs. And as a conditional use, we already allow duplexes. The only thing that is going to change in our development code with the way that this housing needs analysis is presented is that duplexes will go from conditional use to outright permitted. Nothing else in that zone is going to change. In R2, we already allow single family and duplexes as outright uses in that zone. And as a conditional use, we already allow triplexes and quadplexes. What is presented in the packet, what this housing needs analysis that I begged for, what this has done is actually moved our city backwards. It's not actually changing anything. It might change some verbiage in the code, like, semantics, but it doesn't actually implement anything that's going to result in actual tangible change. And it really makes me sad because I'm aware of at least 3 teachers at my kid's school that is living with their parents because they don't have housing in Estacada. My mom owns a restaurant and she's losing servers every day because they can't find a place to live in Estacada and they have to move to Gladstone. And now because of the price of gas, they're talking to my mom about not being able to continue their job at the restaurant in Estacada. And my mom's one restaurant owner with one, story that happened today. I don't know what's going to happen to all the other restaurants in Estacada. We're already losing staff because people cannot afford to live where they work. So I'm not putting my name on what is presented today because it actually doesn't change a damn thing. So I will leave it at that. And I realize this is my last meeting and that if I don't help pass a housing needs analysis, that it might not get passed in Estacada the way I want it to, but I, in good conscience, cannot move Estacada backward. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on that? Does it read right?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
I move to approve the ordinance 2022-010, an ordinance amending chapter 8, housing of the city's comprehensive plan and title 16 development of the Estacada Municipal Code.
Okay, do I have a
I second.
I have a first and a second. Let's do roll call on this one, please.
Counselor Dunsmuir,
No.
Counselor Hughes,
Yes.
Counselor Lidkey,
Yes.
Counselor McElroy,
Yes.
Counselor Strobel,
No.
Counselor Tenbush,
No.
Mayor Drinkling.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
And we've
Uh,
been
next
at,
we-
we've been at this for a little over an hour. Does anybody need to take a 5-minute break or can we just do that real quick and we'll come back and then we'll roll through the rest of these pretty quickly?
All right.
Okay.
Everybody back at the table?
We are ready.
All right, we will continue the city council meeting. First here, I have the planning commission appointments. My reading over the appointments, I am going to do the planning and the diversity at the same time since I already got them here. I got David Hughes for the planning and I got Tiffany Calder for the diversity, equity and inclusion. Is that okay? Go ahead.
I need to recuse myself from any voting for planning commission.
Okay. All right. Sure.
We're appointing 2 seats for DEIC.
Oh, are you too?
Yeah, 2 seats.
Oh, okay. I only had one on there.
They recommended Michael Anderly and Tiffany Calder for the
Yes.
seats at the last meeting.
Okay. All right. Let me add that in there.
And then the planning commission actually made a recommendation for the applicants. They did a scoring matrix kind of a thing. I'm not describing that very well. And the 2 the highest scoring candidates coming out of the planning commission meeting were Ryan Carpenter and Kim Truhella.
Yeah.
But
I saw that.
you can do whatever you are
Yep.
desiring to do.
All right. Thank you. So on that, I guess we'll start off with the planning first. David Hughes is who I put forward. Do I have a motion on the floor?
I move to approve David Hughes to be appointed to the planning commission.
Okay, I have a first. Do I have a second? Okay, am I getting a second? So can I have another motion in play?
I'd like to make a motion to approve Brian Carpenter for the position.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor say yes.
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 Yes. All right, all those opposed?
No.
No,
Okay, 2 opposed, the rest, yes.
All right. Okay, so motion carries 2 opposed.
Okay,
motion
so
carries.
Ryan Carpenter is now part of the planning commission. And then on the other one, we have Tiffany Calder and Michael, what's his name?
Anderly.
Anderly. Do I have a motion on the floor?
I move to approve Tiffany Calder and Michael Anderly to the Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Committee.
All right, do I have a second?
I'd like to clarify. I second his motion, but would like to clarify that Tiffany Calder is being appointed to the term ending 3/31/23 and Michael Anderly to the term ending 3/31/24.
Okay,
I amend my motion.
okay.
And I'll second his
He's got a
amended
second.
motion.
Okay, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next, we have the award engineering firm for wastewater treatment plan relocation project. And I'll let staff speak to that a little bit.
Okay, yes. So we put out and I wrote this all in the staff report. So I will be brief, but there's a process for acquiring an engineer or any type of professional firm. If we put a project out to bid, we take the lowest bid. If you're hiring an engineer or architect or a professional like that, you do a request for proposals or qualifications, and then you have a scoring criteria. A committee is appointed to review that, and score them according to what was in that, in that request. And so we followed that process. If anybody has any questions about that process, I'd be happy to answer that. But the committee recommended Kennedy Jenks. That was the highest scoring firm through the process, and there was a unanimous, after we met, there was unanimous decision to recommend them. And so the motion would be to approve that recommendation of the review committee and then authorize staff to proceed with contract negotiations with Kennedy Jenks. Because it hasn't been based on price at all, I don't anticipate having trouble negotiating that contract. But if for some reason we did, we'd come back and ask to go to the next one, or we would move to the next one. And then as we get that contract, the scope of work and the contract put together, that will come back to the council again in January for review and approval. And Kurt McLeod will be representing the city. Chris Lewis and I and Elena will work on that with Kennedy Jenks if that's if the council approves that.
Okay.
Are there any questions?
No questions at the table? Okay, so you've heard the motion. Motion is that Kennedy Jenks is what staff recommended and we're comfortable.
And the committee was, Chris Lewis is our plants director, and then myself and Elena, and we included Sean, Mayor Drinkwine in that. So he could look at the proposals also, and then Ben Wheeler is chair of the planning commission to keep them looped in. So I felt like we had a good mix there.
Okay, great, thank you. So do I have a motion on the floor?
I move to approve that Kennedy Jenks, I don't even know how this is worded. I can't find it
It's
in the
okay. I'm
packet.
so sorry about the packet. So sorry about, so it's just a motion to recommend, to approve the recommendation of the review committee and authorize staff to proceed with contract negotiations with Kennedy Jenks.
Yes, so moved.
Second.
Okay, first and second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, next is a salary scale modification for classified staff, and I'll let you speak to that.
Okay, yes, this is a request that I'm presenting to the council. It is, sorry about that. I'm getting a dry throat here. It is something that is not common. This is usually happens at July 1. Where we do a COLA that's based on what it can be anywhere around this, kind of around the CPI. It was at, I believe, 7% in July, which seemed like a lot, not sustainable necessarily to go ahead and do that. So we requested, and through the budget process, a 3.15% COLA was approved. And this is now I'm coming to you to ask that we could make up that other 7 to get it to, it'd actually be a little over 7% if we do a 3.85% increase right now. And this is for our classified hourly staff. I feel like they are the ones that are being the most greatly impacted by what is going on in the economy right now. And then our salary scale for management and for classified is expiring. So Sadie and I and Elena will be working on doing a review. Actually, quite a few cities right now are doing a review of their salary scale. So we'll be able to glean more information from them. But I feel like we do well. I feel like we're probably even, in some cases less than other cities around us. I'm sure there's cities probably that we're more than also. But for the most part, we're even or less. And I think that the classified staff would be to maintain that talent that we have this would be appropriate. So I'm requesting this rather than just like giving it. I could just give everybody an extra step. That kind of messes up the whole process of earning that step over time. And so I just wanted to put it to you, and I would request, and all of our managers were really agreeable to it for their staff. So
And that we lost a few staff because of our pay scale lately.
we did lose one. We lost one for a significant pay increase to do very similar work. And so, and then we had one when we were trying to hire before that person came, one who declined to work for us because we couldn't meet the pay requirements. But overall, I feel like we do well and we have great benefits. I know when I was like 25, I didn't care about benefits, but we do have benefits. Those are important. And so this would increase, like the range of the increase would be between, for our lowest paid person, it would increase them 83 cents an hour. For the highest paid, it would be about $1.20 an hour increase. And so Sadie and I have looked at the budget. We'll be revising the whole schedule here shortly, but just wanted to get this implemented if you are agreeable to it.
I think your benefits comment was true to fact, but at the same time, food on the table is a good section.
Food, I know, benefits don't buy food, but
No, we appreciate all of the classified staff. I've worked closely with them over the years and they all work very hard.
they do work very hard.
I think we've got a pretty good consensus here at the table that we'll go with this.
Okay.
So you want us to put?
Could
to a
we,
vote,
yeah,
or
can we
is-
do a motion? I move to approve the classified salary scale as presented.
Sure.
So moved.
Okay. I got firsts all over the place, so you pick one. Do I have a second?
Second.
Yeah, first and second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we are at the second consideration for ordinance 2022-013, an ordinance amending certain chapters in the title. To administration personnel of the Estacada Municipal Code. committee membership revisions. So. go ahead.
So I've read through this and I thought there was missing something in here, so I'm gonna move to approve with amendment. And so it currently reads, members of the budget committee may not serve on any other committee at the same time. But I feel like that's kind of an incomplete one, and I think in order to make it so it can't be circumvented and to it actually meets the actual intent of it, should say members of the budget committee may not serve on any other committee at the same time, or and not in the same budget period approved. So basically, if they are in the budget committee and they approve a budget, they can't serve on any of those committees until after that budget period is expired. Meaning that they're not approving a budget and then serving on a committee that's spending that budget, which is the whole intent of this point in here. And there was a question in the past, and when we were talking to Melanie about it, that there was a concern about if we can limit the budget committee. We're not limiting the budget committee, we're limiting the commissions that we're putting on there. So that's the focus onto that one. It's not touching the budget committee necessarily. It's the commissions that are being served on. So it wouldn't violate any sort of rules around the budget committee, but something that we do have control on, which is the other commissions. So so my motion is I move to approve with the amendment of adding cannot serve as well, how to word that? Cannot serve until budget period approved as expired. I may need to reword that.
Would that be appropriate wording for that motion?
I think that would accomplish what Joel is wanting, or what Counselor Litke is wanting to do.
Okay. All right, so the motion stands. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
We're first and second. All those in favor say aye.
Can we discuss?
Yeah.
Sorry, can we discuss? I would respectfully like to just state that staff does not support this. And I understand, I know, so Counselor Litke is transparency, 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 and making sure that, everything is above board. There's no like, I'm going to get on the budget committee and then I'll drop off, even though it's 3-year term on the budget committee, but I'll drop so I can get on another committee. And so I do appreciate that, but it's a administration entanglement to try to track that. And it's also in my opinion, which you could disagree with, it doesn't serve a large purpose because the committees are using any funds that are awarded them for a community benefit. They're putting on whatever, they do, their fun runs or their the art walks and things like that. So I appreciate that. I would just like to say it's difficult. It would be difficult administratively to track that. It could be done. If you want to do it, it could be done, but
It's only this one group, right? I'm getting it, just the budget committees that we're talking about.
I'd like to also discuss.
Yeah, go for it.
The budget meeting or the budget committee, they meet very seldomly, like once or twice a year. That's once or twice a year over a 3-year period for their term. I would not want to exclude an enthusiastic and potentially knowledgeable volunteer of our city from participating in a normal committee that meets once a month for those 3 years. So, we're talking about 36 times over a 3-year period versus 6 times over a 3-year period. I wouldn't want to exclude anybody because they want to serve on the budget committee. But in fact, I could see a real benefit of having somebody from the Parks and Recreation Committee who knows how much playgrounds cost these days and knows how much they're talking about needing to spend on the next park project, to go to the budget committee and say, hey, I'd like to provide my insight and my knowledge set to this discussion. Can I please be on the budget committee? And I think that as a city, you should absolutely welcome that level of expertise and enthusiasm from your volunteers, rather than say, oh, I'm so sorry, you're going to have to pick one. You either get to be on the budget committee or you get to be on Parks and Recreation. You got to pick now. I don't see. I see it doing more detriment than good.
Okay. Jerry, did you have something?
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with the not being able to serve on the budget committee. I mean, there's so many members of the budget committee, including all of us, that you know, the idea of them trying to, you know, do anything. I mean, like I said, there's so many members of budget committee, including all of us, that I don't see it being a actual issue. So.
Okay, Paul?
I voted against it as well the first time too. If we had to move forward with it, I'd rather it be a simplified one as presented by staff, because I think if we find that we're having trouble pulling people in to other committee meeting or to other commissions or other committees, then we may need to roll that back. Because again, it only meets that one time per year. So I would prefer to see it simplified as presented here, but I prefer it not be in there at all.
Okay, anybody want to speak on that side? Joel?
Couple things. First of all, each committee presents a budget, and the person that's buying the budget to go to the budget committee, so they have the ability to explain why they need it there. It's normal in many cases in many organizations and also different levels of government where you don't approve your budget and then spend your budget. That's normal. There's plenty, as you said, it's a pretty big committee. So, but the thing is, if someone's serving on the budget and they're on that committee, they have the ability to make an argument for it. Just like if we benefit something, we can't argue for it. It's still, all that's still there. It doesn't change anything. But I think, like I said, it's for accountability, it's for transparency. And the amendment to it just makes it solidifies that in the process. So.
Okay. Any comments on the part on that?
I mean, I agree. I see both sides of the coin, but I could see there being a potential conflict of interest if you are serving on one committee and then having a say in how that money is being spent down the road. If we can look at, you know, maybe what Counselor Strobel is recommending, just kind of maybe simplify the wording a little bit, so it's not a constraint on city staff to do the tracking. And like you had mentioned, maybe that would be a good compromise here, but those are my thoughts.
Okay. Mike first, then Katie.
Yes.
Wouldn't it be just as simple as if someone came up for a commission position, if they're on we would just ask them if they're on the budget committee? Wouldn't that just be the tracking of it?
That's how it's presented. The way I think that Councilor Lickey would like to alter it is if they were on the budget committee when the budget was approved, that would also eliminate them from being on any other committee. So they couldn't quit the budget committee and get on a different committee in the same fiscal year. Which would probably be a trigger, and we could track that because we'd like, oh, you're quitting the budget committee to be on something else. But it just, however you want to do it, but I would recommend just keeping it simple.
Okay, so the word conflict of interest kind of set me off here because people have a really, really skewed perception of what conflict of interest actually is. In fact, I'm going to ask it straight out. Counselor Litkey, why didn't you recuse yourself when you voted to give ECW $2,500 of money in grants?
Two reasons. One, I don't make a decision for the financial. And two,
okay.
it's a nonprofit.
Okay.
I don't spend the money.
Okay, so we're talking about city committees that are run by multiple people. So if you have one person on the Parks and Rec committee that is a board of 5 or 7, okay. Parks and Rec is 5. Okay, that's so. So you've got 5 people on Parks and Rec, and one person from Parks and Rec decides that they also want to participate on the budget committee. And then let's just say that they nefariously get themselves into this committee and nefariously approve extra money to go to the Parks and Recreation Committee. And then when they get to the Parks and Recreation Committee, they say, okay, other 4 people that I serve on this board with, how can we nefariously give all the money to me, which would be actual personal conflict of interest. When we're talking about the city, we're talking about nonprofits. The city's not in it for profit. They're a nonprofit. And second, this one person who's serving on this one board or possibly two is not making the decisions on the entire behalf of this particular committee, nor are they making the entire decision on that, on the entire budget committee itself. So that being said, the whole thing about conflict of interest, when we're talking about someone serving on a city budget committee and then someone serving on another city committee, be it Arts Commission, Parks and Rec, Library Board, there's no conflict there. Their goal is to help the city. And if they're doing that in the capacity of the budget committee and they're doing it in the capacity of the library board, let them. They're helping the city. They're not helping themselves. That's what conflict of interest actually is helping yourself. If you're not helping yourself, there's no conflict. You're helping the city. That's what the budget committee exists for.
I never said it would be personal benefit.
We did.
No,
Now,
she used the
that-
word conflict of
Both of
interest.
you have said your piece. Now it's my turn. Being on this the longest out of any of you, sitting on more budgets than I can count,
Mhm.
watching how the money was spent and which direction it went into at all times, depending on who was more important. It does make a difference. So to think it doesn't is ridiculous. And to say it's nonprofit, you're right, it is a nonprofit. We're not making anything from it, but it can change the course of which things get prioritized in your city and which don't. So to say it doesn't make a difference is ridiculous. It does make a difference. So that being said, we already have a motion on the floor. So can I get a second?
Second.
I have a first and second. All those in
Can I
favor say
restate-
aye.
Can I restate
Aye.
the motion? Oh, just before we vote, it's helpful if we pause. I'm sorry, that just helps me if we pause. So so the motion would be to, and we might have to bring this back again, but I'm going to read it out loud, so maybe that counts. This isn't Title 16, I don't know. We'll have to figure it out. Okay, so we're going to approve, a move to approve ordinance 2022-013. An ordinance amending certain chapters in Title II Administration and Personnel of the Estacada Municipal Code with the change in 2.14.040H. So it will read, members of the Budget Committee may not serve on any other committee at the same time or for the remainder of the budget year they approved. But for the remainder of the year of the budget they approved. It's got to be a better way, but it'll be like that. Is that? okay?
Yes,
Okay.
that sounds right.
The fiscal year of the budget they
Yeah, the
approved?
fiscal year sounds right.
Okay. Of the.
Or their
fiscal
approved budget year, whatever.
Okay. All right, that's the motion. And
And I have a second
thank
already.
you. Okay.
And city do roll call on this, so we're clear.
Counselor Dunsmuir,
No.
Counselor Hughes,
Yes.
Counselor Lidkey,
Yes.
Counselor McElroy,
Yes.
Counselor Strobel,
No.
Counselor Ten Bush,
No.
Mayor Drinkline.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, we are at the next citizen group comment. I have a Brendan D. Leakey on here.
Hi, everybody. I'm here actually as president of the nonprofit, Ms. Dunsmuir actually mentioned. Positive note, I wanted to thank you guys for approving the grant for us because I wanted to give you an idea of what you're approving. This year for Christmas, we have adopted 20 families. That is 35 adults, whether they be parents, grandparents, or adult children. 51 kids, 2 babies on the way, and 3 newborns that are going to have Christmas this year, thanks to you guys. So thank you. Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we are at mayor council reports and comments. I'll start off with you, Mike.
I just appreciate the good turnout tonight. And thank the staff for all the work they do. I know it's a challenging situation for you guys at times. And that's about it.
Okay, thank you. Charity.
Yeah, thank you, staff. I know it was a big report to put together with, and it was a little complicated to get through, but I know we'd had some conversations, maybe hopefully in the future can make it a little bit more user friendly. I want to thank everybody for coming out. Wish you all a Merry Christmas. I will say in the future, I really do hope that we can have more civil discussions with council. So if people are bringing things to, looking for some sort of compromise, that we're not being attacked. I would really appreciate that. And I think we can do that. So with that said, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Thanks. I know that I always try to find something to challenge you, and I'm sure you get to take lots of ibuprofen and aspirin after my calls, but the intent is to try to, as you know, you mentioned, it's accountability and transparency. And I think the more we can put that in there for the people, the more that the people, as you saw, there's a lot of distrust already in what we're here standing for as a city. You heard a call that tonight several times, is the city's just gonna do what they want. But the more accountability, the more transparency we can put into that place brings more trust back into the city and its representatives and gets more people behind it. So that is the whole reason why I push transparency and accountability. And if I see a place to add an extra step in there, that is one more thing we can do to get the people behind it. And we're here to represent as many of the people as we can. We can't represent everybody because everybody has different opinions and you'll never get anywhere. So you do the best, you represent as many as you can, and you take all that in, and there's always gonna be a compromise somewhere. And so the best we can do as a council is to try to have a hearty discussion about it. And then we come to a vote and then it goes one way or the other. Not everything goes our way, and that's okay. That's part of having what we're here for. And so, I appreciate the council for having diversified opinions on it. It's nothing personal. We all have our ways we want to go about it. And there's going to be things in the future that we're not going to agree on, and that I'm sure that things are going to go the way we want it and vice versa. And it's just the way it is. But that's why you have a balance to it. And I appreciate all the counselors that have come back and forth and really have put in a civil sort of way without condescension, and understanding that we're here to have the debate and come out to an end in the end. And it's what we're here for. We're represented to represent the people and bring those voices forward in the best way we can. So I appreciate everybody who's had civil discourse in this way, 100%. And Merry Christmas to everybody. And I hope you guys have a great new year, and see you guys then.
Okay, Katie?
This is officially the last one I get to make. As much as I could spend hours going on about this circus council and the IQ points I probably have lost in the last 4 years, but I'm going to walk away knowing that I did everything that I promised the people who voted for me. I did my damnedest to bring housing diversity. I fought so hard for 4 years, and I was met with absolutely nothing but barrier after barrier after barrier after barrier. And after 4 years, I am so proud of you guys for moving duplexes from conditional use to outright permitted use in the R1 zone. Give yourselves a big hand. You just did so much for the housing affordability of Estacada, the biggest problem we've been talking about for 4 years, and absolutely nothing has been done to move the needle. That being said, I am really excited about the housing projects that I've been hearing about coming down on Eagle Creek, and I'm very glad to eventually see some housing for my kids to move into when they graduate high school, or my aging parents as they are unable to care for themselves and maybe can't have a full big house. But I'm just going to close with thanking the few people in my life who actually matter. In the last 4 years, I couldn't have done any of this without city staff. Really, you guys are the backbone of the city, and I feel really bad for everything you have to put up with, because you're hearing it from all sides. And sometimes it's really hard to know who's going to yell at you today. And I feel so bad for you guys, but you rock it with a smile. And I really appreciate that about each and every one of you. I also want to thank my husband, Chris, who is going to be there for me when I get home tonight to offer an ear to listen to, because as much as when the citizens of Estacada throw a fit, they get what they want. When I throw a fit, it's condescending, apparently. But you know, it's been a lot. He's definitely been someone who helped me over the last couple of years, and I'm really glad that I get to call him my husband now. Officially, I am actually not Katie Dunsmuir. I am Katie Absher now, so I get to move into my retired political life with a completely different name, which is great because of a lot of reasons. And then really the two most important people in my life are Isla and Lacey, my beautiful daughters who are 9 and 6. They would have been here tonight, except for my youngest is at home with 102-degree fever. So didn't bring them here, but they are the reason that I am here. They are the reason that I have been fighting for Estacada. They are the reason that I wanted a splash pad built at the park that we had earmarked in 2018. They are the reason that I wanted their teachers to be able to live in the city that they taught at their schools. They are the reason that I have done absolutely everything in the last 4 years. And I think that we can all say that to some extent about our own children, that our kids are the reasons we're up here. If I didn't have my kids, I really wouldn't give two, but I do because of them. And I really hope that moving into the future with Estacada, that my kids will actually get to experience Estacada the way that I did when I was growing up. But I don't have a lot of faith, but I guess you can hope for the worst, or you can hope for the best and expect the worst, or whatever it is. And I'm just curious to see what you guys do. And if you just do what you've done over the last 4 years, it's not going to be much. So thank you for nothing to some of you. Thank you for everything to many others.
Jerry.
First off, like always, I want to thank staff. You guys are amazing, put together a great packet. I got through it, not so much on the iPad because it keeps, going back, but my home PC, I got through it pretty easily. Didn't have really any questions that needed to be answered immediately. I got them all answered tonight. So thank you guys for that packet. And I want to be the first up here to say thank you, Katie, for the last 4 years. We haven't agreed on everything, but we've agreed on a few things, and your knowledge and the knowledge that you bring to that you've brought to this council will be missed, because we will be lacking in that area that you specialize in. But I appreciate you being here with us for the last 4 years. It's been a wild ride, and thank you very much. And thank you to all the citizens that spoke, that voted and put me back on council, myself and Councilor McElroy and Heidi Prokop on the council for the next 4 years. I appreciate you all, and I look forward to serving for 4 more years.
Well, I want to thank staff again. Lots of questions asked recently and answers given. I appreciate the time and effort that you guys put into this. I'm glad that we're targeting, we may get out before 9:30 tonight too, which I did not dream would happen tonight. But also, Katie, it has been great working with you the last 2.5 years. I echo what Jerry said. I just want to add, I also appreciate your passion for the city as well too. It's certainly come forth and is appreciated. And Mike, Jerry, congrats on another term or getting voted into it. Very much looking forward to working with you too. And Heidi, welcome aboard. Looking forward to having you join the crew as well.
Good. All right. Well, I was going to try to be nice. I was going to try to say nice things like mayors do. But I don't appreciate being put down by a counselor at all for any reason. I just don't. Oh, you directed it at all the council here. I'm part of that council, from what I understand. Saying that on your way out is exactly why you're where you are. Because you started like you finished, accomplishing nothing.
Point of order, we're not supposed to.
She just did it to me.
Did not.
Oh, you think?
She did not.
You think?
It was directed at all of us and you cannot.
Well, we have an audience, I think, that would say different, and I think a council that would say different. So it doesn't really matter, okay? I appreciate each and every one of the people that came out tonight, of course, and we work hard to make this city a better place. And her putting us down in any fashion was just against everything I stand for. So that being said, I want you all to have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year's. So thank you. This meeting is adjourned.